If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, you can dial 516-453-9921. Be sure to press the number 1 button and you will go to the top of the line. If you would just like to listen to the show, you can do so. They'll ask you and you can just tell them that you're just listening. But if you have a question, make sure you push that button. Otherwise, we do welcome you into today's program. Chat room is open. KJ is in there. Thank you, JJ. He's already there, but that is open and functioning properly, and that's good. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, with your Gmails. Now, I'm going to ask you, ma'am, I'm going to ask you, sir, if you do elect to do that, please do not write me a novel because I cannot read that. I'm going to cut down even on the ones that I have now and ask you to rewrite it. Or you can just call in to get across your point because I may not read it the way that you have written it. So please, ma'am, please, sir, if you can do that. All the books, I understand, are all in, including the original book. Mr. Fuller will talk about that. For some reason, as he has stated, there are a lot of people that want that book for whatever the reason, but it is in. But the new edition is in, and you can get that. Okay, I think that is all. My brothers are on the line with me. The Gatewood brothers, they make sure that Mr. Fuller and I are where we need to be, that any problems that we have, they try to work that out for us. Okay, let's kick off the show here this morning with a Gmail from William. He says this, Mr. Fuller, good greetings, good morning. Do you think that whoever is chosen, selected, elected to be the next president of the United States will be the one that the racist white supremacists think will be the best one to strengthen the system of racism, white supremacy?
I don't know. The only people who can determine that would be the white supremacists themselves. They know who they want to be with the title of president of the United States, or president, or emperor, or king, of whatever, or supervisor. The white supremacists are the only people who are qualified to answer that question about what their best interest is. So I couldn't speak for them. They would have to speak for themselves about that. Different people, right down to individuals, has been my observation, have different opinions about who should be doing what and how and when. Sometimes the white supremacists get into arguments among themselves, all down to history, about the best way to go about practicing white supremacy. So much so that they have wars, so-called. I mean, lots of blood being shed just between themselves and their basic gangster operations. The whole history of gangsters is to fight among themselves about how to go about best running a gangster operation. So that kind of goes with that territory.
Okay.
White supremacy is a gangster operation.
Yes. Okay. Okay. 516-453-9921 if you want to ask a question to Mr. Fuller. Okay, Mr. Fuller, this comes from Landwood, says this. Mr. Fuller, are white people scared of white people who are white supremacists? And what do white people who are not racist fear the most about white persons who are racist?
Here again, I don't know that. But evidently, what the code book says is the white people who have the ability to stop racism do not have the will. And those who have the will do not have the ability. That's according to what? Logic. If you have the will to do something and the ability to do it, you'll get it done. You don't have to ask anybody anything. You just get it done. But if you have the will but don't have the ability, well, it doesn't mean anything, because if you don't have the ability to do your will, it just means you don't have the ability to do your will. And so the people who do have the will and the ability are the white supremacists. That's why you have white supremacy. They have the will to be white supremacists, and they have the ability that goes with that will. And that's why you have a worldwide system called the system of white supremacy that's designed deliberately to mistreat and dominate people of color all over the world, 24 hours a day, in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
Okay. In the news, Mr. Fuller, there's been some controversy about certain black, in particular, celebrities making comments, perhaps maybe joining the Trump's team, or support for Trump, or alleged support for Trump. I know that you claim that you read newspapers and magazines, and you keep you are aware of certain stories in the news. A question has come up concerning the alleged support that the rapper Ice Cube has allegedly made with the Trump administration, and it has caused a lot of confusion in the black community. Have you heard or read anything about that yourself?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of what he has tried to do, he being Mr. Ice Cube, contract with Black America?
No, sir.
Okay, you have not. Okay. Okay, so you're not aware of that. Okay. Well, then let's move on to this then. Okay. This comes from Manifesting Dreams. It says, Mr. Fuller, yesterday, one of the grand jurors, a white man, in the Breonna Taylor case, just filed a motion to have the transcripts released on the case, stating that Daniel Cameron, a black man, the Attorney General, lied to the American people and withheld information, tampering with the grand jury's decision to convict the officers involved. My question to you, Mr. Fuller, is, can you explain to the listeners and myself how a black attorney general has to answer to a day-to-day white man's work, a white man who's demanding justice for a black woman?
Well, according to the code, which is what I have written, the compensatory counter-racist code that's supposed to be based on logic, if we're in a system of white supremacy, the victims of white supremacy, meaning all people of color here in the year 2020, are subject to the white supremacists. So it should not be surprising that any victim of white supremacy would do what the white supremacists want done in order to maintain white supremacy. The black people of this planet are prisoners of war. Prisoners of war are kind of known, for the most part, to do what they are told. That's how they became prisoners. Otherwise, they would have not been prisoners by having made the decision to see to it that they weren't going to be taken prisoner by maybe whatever means it took to do that, including up to killing themselves. But once you want to stay alive and get benefits of some type and look forward to a future, all people are given the choice of being taken prisoner or being made to suffer for not being taken prisoner or die. In this particular case, I think it would just be suffering and have a lot of problems. Kind of opt to go along to get along, like all of the black people on the planet who are still breathing are doing anyway, including myself. I'm still here. Mm-hmm. I'm here because the white supremacists allow me to be here. If I did anything that would displease them to the extent that they would not give me any support, I would be in big trouble, if not dead. So, as a prisoner of war, which is what I am, I act like most prisoners of war. I go shuffling along and do what I'm told. I'm doing that right now. The white supremacists allow me to have a voice against them. And I have concluded they allow me to do that because they say they're very intelligent people. They say he's not effective. Nobody's paying any attention to him, and if they are, they're not acting on it. They're just paying him some attention and walking on. So we don't care about that. Let him talk. Let them all talk. Let them all walk around with signs all day long until they drop. We don't care as long as nothing changes. As long as this, as you say in gangster terms, as long as it's not bad for business, the business of white supremacy.
Okay. 516-453-9921 is the number that you can call to get in contact with the show. Pro Design 29 South and KJ are in the chat room. Thank you for listening. Also in the 704, we have Miss Jeter. Thank you also for listening, as well as the other callers that are just listening. Mr. Fuller and I, we do thank you for that, and also for the Gmails. This comes from Dollar Bill. He says this, Mr. Fuller. He says, I'm not able to participate or partake as usual because I'm back at work, so I will wish you all the best today and listen to the show later. My question today, Mr. Fuller, would be, we have a new book that came out that talks about caste, C-A-S-T-E, and that this nation, as most of the world, is more a caste system than a system based off of racism, white supremacy, according to the author. What is the difference, Mr. Fuller, between caste and racism, white supremacy? Thank you and have a good day.
I don't know, because I didn't use that term in any of my writings. So that means, according to the code, those who use the term should explain what the term means. But from what I have understood by reading a dictionary, different dictionaries have different definitions, but the average dictionary defines caste in such a way that it could be applied to a color caste system. A caste system is just a class system, I guess. I don't know whether that's true or not, depending on who's doing the talking, but I would think so. And so when you base a caste and or class system on what color someone is, that would fit the description. The system of white supremacy would be a caste system and a class system based on the color of one's skin or the non-color. Both of those terms would be interchangeable, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what the author of that book meant, someone would have to consult that author. That's the compensatory process. I cannot speak for the author of the book. I can only speak from what I have experienced and the way that I would respond to the question. Is color caste system or color class system one and the same? And I would say yes, if you choose to look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I choose to look at it that way.
All right.
It's a matter of how a person chooses to look at the same thing. What words you use. Words are just tools to get an understanding of what it is people are talking about.
Words are just tools. Okay. Brightness has just entered the chat room. Good morning, Brightness. Okay, let's go to the 832 area code. Everett from the concept called Houston is up next. And let's see if I can get you in, Everett. Okay, we're buffering here. Okay, Everett, got you. Do your thing.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning,
Good
Mr.
morning,
Fuller.
sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir. My question is, well, it's a little bit of VGQ in the question. I'm going to make it short. A week ago, Senator Cory Booker out of New Jersey, which is a quote-unquote Democrat, he was making a speech saying, quote, people of color need to come together and unify, unquote. Why does the code goes against that? Because what I've been reading in the code, the title of the code starts with the independent concept. Independent means you by yourself. You're your own code. Why does the code go against a bunch of people of color coming together?
Oh, the code. I don't know what people mean when I say it. That's just Neely Fuller's perspective. When people say come together, that's very broad. It's like it's sort of like, I think it's a slogan, like we shall overcome. Now, whomever, according to the code, uses a term or a set of words, that person, that individual person, should be requested to say what he or she means.
But that's what he did. And the thing is, Mr. Fuller, when Cory, the senator, said that, he didn't give a plan. He just says, we just need to come together. Come together and do what? Why are there so many slogans like that? Come together.
Well, that's what I have asked down through the years. I think I understand why the slogan comes into being, because there's a necessity for it. But I have said on this program and many others, and it's not in the book, but in hearing people say black people must unite, black people must have unity, black people must come together, get together. I have always looked at that. Well, yes, but what does that mean in practical terms? What do you actually do when you get together? I've always asked that, and usually I get very, very confusing answers or no answer at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so, therefore, the procedure, when someone says, if I say it, black people should unite, black people should get together, I should have a list of specifics about exactly what that means. 1, 2, 3. Black people should do this. And try to set a timetable for the job being done. Black people should do this. Step number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. I think that's the codified way of doing things, but I don't know how other people choose to go about doing things. Maybe you do things by just under VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualifications, you just come up with endless slogans. But I have said on the air here, like I started to say a few minutes ago, slogans are like titles of books. Now, books should have titles, but when you turn the pages of the book, the pages should not be blank. Otherwise, the titles are not explained. All titles of books should have an explanation of the title of the book. I have an explanation of the title of the textbook for Victims of White Supremacy. That's an explanation. Even though I have some, the major title is the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. That would mean nothing. It wouldn't mean anything to me. I don't think it would mean anything to anybody who looked at that as a cover of a book without turning the pages and seeing what the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept is, word for word, which in my book, I explain what these words mean and why they're there.
And you do, and everything that you put in your book, you explain very good, because the book is also making me a little solitary. Not to say I want to be by myself all the time, but I'm thinking closely to myself, looking at things the way they are. Is that one of the best ways to fight white supremacy, instead of just all of us coming together?
Well, here again, I don't know what people mean when they say come together. Everybody who uses that expression, the code says each individual, see, different individuals, I have found from experience, have a different meaning about what that means. So all it comes down to is, okay, explain what you mean, Mr. Rogers. Explain what you mean, Miss Green. Explain what you mean when you say we have to come together. You might mean come together and eat some chicken, and that's it. Nothing else. See, but that is a specific. If the person says that, well, we should come together and have a chicken party, a chicken eating contest. And the person, once the person says that, that's it. That's the person's answer. That's what they meant.
That's why I'm reading more of anybody that says something needs to explain themselves. Okay,
yes,
that's what
all words should be explained. All suggestions should be backed up with details. According to what? Neely Fuller? No, according to logic.
Okay.
Thank
you so much.
All right, Edward. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. And for your question here. Thank you so much. Let me see you. There we go. Okay. I think I'm going to do this. Here. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, to get in contact with the show, call 516-453-99 or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Now, I cannot promise you that it will be read today, but it will be in the system, and it will be read as I am reading Gmails along with having Mr. Fuller answer your questions now on this show. So it's all good. Just you can do it those two ways, and Mr. Fuller will answer your questions. So again, you're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. As we continue, Mada VGQ is in the house, get in the chat room, and so good morning to all those in the chat room. And Sylvia, yes, she's just listening. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Mr. Fuller, before we go on, would it be, or could you, or think that this would be an appropriate statement, or your thoughts on this statement? The statement is, with the quarantine going on, basically in the prison system all over the planet, could you consider, or what would this statement mean to you? Don't let the quarantine dominate you, but you dominate the quarantine. Would that hold any power for you or suggestion to you, or what would that mean to you? Just your thoughts.
Well, the quarantine and the disease are two different things.
Yes.
I understand the quarantine means you react to the disease by doing what you think best to protect yourself from the disease. I think that's a part of it. I think whomever said we're going under quarantine will explain it that way. I don't know. I hadn't said anything about quarantine. I'd have to ask, according to compensatory procedures, ask the person who says, what do you mean by quarantine? And
yes.
What is quarantine supposed to do? If it's supposed to help protect me from a disease, then if a person explains it that way, then I'll say, okay, I want to be protected from a disease, so what do I do in order to fulfill the requirements of protecting myself from the disease under what is said to be quarantine? See, all problems are solved through what? The process of what?
Questions.
According to the code. Questions and answers.
Mm-hmm.
All problems, no exceptions. You just go into a questioning mode, like that question is asked just now. And that's my response to that question.
Okay.
What do you mean by quarantine? If it means protecting me from a disease, I'm all for it. I'm all for doing anything that will protect me from something that will kill me. That's what? Logic.
Okay. Now, I'm glad you answered that way, because now this is the question. Would it be good to say, don't let the system of white supremacy dominate you, but you dominate white supremacy?
Well, if that's a suggestion, the person who made this suggestion could say it that way. I wouldn't exactly rephrase it that way. But here again, I would ask a question. What do you mean by dominating white supremacy? I use the expression replace white supremacy, which I guess you would dominate it, which means it wouldn't be white supremacy anymore. Replace white supremacy with a logical and constructive system, which would be a system of justice.
Exactly.
Which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help in all areas of activity.
Okay. Good. And so in order for that to transpire, we must have a code. Is that correct?
Must have a code.
Okay.
Must have. Anything that's ever worked successfully had a code. I understand they're looking at the genetic code of a disease called COVID-19. They're looking at it. They're studying it because they say that disease has a code. So if the disease has a code, if you're going to fight the disease, you have to come up with a codified way of fighting the disease and eliminating and or nullifying the disease. I understand that's the procedure. Everything that's always worked in the known universe has been according to a code.
You're exactly correct, Mr. Fuller. And it makes me wonder, why is there a patent on that? But that's a different conversation. Let's do this. Let's go to the 717, and we're going to get Darnell. Darnell, you in the house, man. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Bobby, and good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, my question is, with the system of white supremacy, it says on, page 6, that everything, it says that there can be no justice and correctness and peace to exist as long as white supremacy exists. So I was wondering what term would apply to what status, I guess, what's going on now. If justice and peace doesn't exist, what do you define it as that's going on?
What's going on now? Oh.
Yes.
Go ahead. Do you have something else to say?
No, I think Mr. Bobby wanted to know where it was located in the compensatory book. It's on page 6 in the notes section.
Okay.
And your question is, what is going on now?
Yes.
The system of white supremacy is going on now. That's the only government in the known universe that's worthy of being called government. Why? Because it dominates the activities in all 9 areas of activity among all the people of the planet, either directly or indirectly. A system based on what color somebody is, a mistreatment system in all of the areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The white supremacists dominate the behavior of the non-white people of this planet here in 2020 in all of those 9 areas of activity throughout the place called planet Earth here in 2020. They're the most powerful government, successful government worldwide that has ever appeared in recorded history. And that's the name of the government, the system of white supremacy. Don't mix it up with anything else. The evidence shows this.
Okay, Darnell,
and for those who want to check the evidence, just go through the areas of activity. Economics. Who tells black people what to do when it comes to economics? The white supremacists, directly and indirectly. Education, same thing. Black people themselves says, I want to be educated. I want to get my education. Where do I go to get my education? They go to the white supremacists. Say, educate me. I don't know enough.
Okay. Darnell, did you have another question?
Yes. It was about the 4 basic entitlements towards the production of justice. I think that's on the same page. If we engaging in this election process and it's like it just seems like it's a charade basically, but it just how like can we get the 4 basic entitlements towards the production of justice to be done either by the victims, or how can we get a request made to the people that are in power to make it happen, as far as like the learning, the housing, the health, and transportation?
Oh, you would get that by asking the white supremacists. As prisoners of war do what? they asked the prison masters, any prisoners, anybody who's ever been in what you call greater confinement, what we call prison, where they have bars and cells, they will tell you if they want anything in the prison system. The usual step is to ask the prison masters because they don't have the power to demand it. If they had the power to demand it, they wouldn't be asking. They would just walk through the prison and take what they want. In fact, they wouldn't even be prisoners. They'd just walk up to the guard, take the keys, and turn the door and walk out. No, you ask, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I go here? Can I go there? That's what the non-white people of this planet do every day. Which way did the white people go? I got to catch up with them so I can ask them to give me an education. Which way did the white people go? I got to catch up with them to ask them to give me a job. Which way did the white people go? I have to catch up with them to ask me, what religion can I practice? That's white supremacy.
All righty. Darnell, thank you so much, sir, and don't be a stranger.
Okay.
All righty. Okay, Mr. Fuller, well, I'm going to do this right now. We've been discussing about having a code, what we need to do. And this is primarily one reason why you wrote this book. You've told the story many times how the sergeant in one of the branches of service that you were in instructed you or asked you, why don't you put all that together? Because I guess you were just writing. Anyway, you began to put this thing together. Could you tell that story leading into how can we get this book and all the information that is necessary for us to gather?
Yes, well, he started me down the path. It was a sergeant, a black sergeant, in the mid-1950s in Japan on a radar site, which is where we were for about a year. They called it a hardship station because it was just a year rather than 2 years, because it was isolated. And he led me to believe, well, first of all, he observed me, and he said, Fuller, I've been watching you, and you're one of these people who's running all over the world looking for an ideal situation. He said, you can forget that. He said, I've been a lot of the places that you're thinking about going. He said, they're not ideal at all. If you want an ideal situation, you will have to produce it. Now, that started me along the lines. It made me angry at first because he could see through me. You know, when you don't like people seeing through you, figuring you out, when you figure you're hiding something about yourself. You don't like anybody to figure out more about you than you know about yourself. Okay, he could do that by observing you and by talking to you and listening to you when you do talk. He was excellent at that. And so I thought about, after my anger wore off, what he was saying. That's exactly what I was doing, running away from problems. And he was saying, hey, you don't run away from problems. You turn around and grab them by the armload and solve them. And then you make traction. Then you make the ideal situation that you are looking for somebody else to set it all up for you to come and walk into paradise. He said, Full, if you want that paradise, you'll have to produce it because it doesn't exist. Why would anybody set up a paradise for you? Just to walk in and sit down and say, this is nice. I'm here. Everybody wait on me. He said, everybody would want that. He said, but it doesn't exist. So that's not going to happen. If you want that type of situation where everything is just sweet all the time, no problems, you're going to have to produce it. That started me on the road to producing the textbook for victims of white supremacy, because I just looked at where I was and what I was doing. And I said, I'm in Japan, and what am I doing here? They say, well, I'm doing what I'm told. Told by whom? By the people who sent me here. And who are they? People who have always told me what to do. White people. What white people? White people who believe in telling black people what to do, and they better do it under a system called, which I called it, I'd heard it, white supremacy. I called it called white supremacy and or racism, but I put some words in front of it. I called it the system of white supremacy, and that's how I started writing a textbook for victims of white supremacy, which you can get by going to producejustice.com. I wrote the first 6 pages. Now, that sergeant told me some other things that helped me. He didn't know it, but it helped me to write because I didn't know what I was writing. I was just trying to write down some kind of direction in my existence because nothing that I was doing was making sense, not even to me. And I was saying, well, what is my purpose in my existence? What should I be doing? You know, I'm here in Japan. What am I supposed to be doing in Japan or any other place? What is my goal? Do I have one? And I looked around me, and when I observed most black people, including the ones in the military unit I was in, they didn't seem to have any goals. Sometimes when I would talk to them, they'd just say, oh, man, you know, it's just something to do, you know. I just like to get out of here and go back home. Okay, and I'd ask, well, when you go back to what you call home, what are you picking on doing then? So I get a job, you know. I'd like to see that girl I left behind. She's still there, you know. And I just listened to the ragged way that black people would go about doing and saying everything, including myself. So I came to the conclusion, I'm going to start codifying to the best of my ability, if I can remember to do so, everything that I do and say so that I get some kind of constructive result. Because that's basically what this sergeant is telling me. Get constructive results, Fuller. I mean, I look for results, and I want them all to work for me, not against me. And I don't want to be around people who are not about constructive results. And so if they're going to be around me, I'm going to see to it that if I'm going to be around them, that there are some constructive results going on. And basically, he was that way in his intentions. I'm not saying he pulled it off because he's under the system of white supremacy. But those were his apparent intentions. And he had let both black people and white people know that. Don't waste my time with something that's non-constructive. You got to show me where it's going to be constructive. I don't want to hear nothing about it. All right. In other words, he would say, I can do, to kind of paraphrase a cliche, say, I can do stupid stuff on my own. Mm-hmm. I don't need no help from the rest of y'all.
Mm-hmm. So then your book, and you speak about it, you developed this code.
Yes.
This is the period that we have. Speak about your book and how we can, how one can get that. Because we have new people that listen to the program every week.
Yes, they can get the book by going to producejustice.com. The first 6 pages of the book were written in a ragged form in the 1950s. I walked around with those 6 pages. It was a code for me to be able to handle situations in an orchestrated manner. In other words, Fuller, do this, don't do that. When somebody says this and this and this, your response will be this, this, and this, and you never deviate from it. Why? Because it works. So I worked out about 6 pages of a code that how I would conduct myself for the rest of the time I was at that radar site in Japan. in the mid-1950s. And so then the 6 pages, ragged pages, became 12 pages, 15 pages, 30 pages. So I decided to recopy it in a little notebook, and then the notebook got too big. Next thing you know, I had a suitcase full of papers. So at some point, the 1980s, I decided I'm going to consolidate all of this and distill it, because it came to be about 1,300 pages, into about 300 and something pages in what is called a textbook for victims of white supremacy, the compensatory code. And it's something that I think will help the average black person figure out what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, and how to say it in every situation that he or she encounters that will produce what? The most constructive result. Just some ideas. It's not dictatorship. I can't dictate to anybody. But I just throw these ideas out there, something to think about. I call it thought, speech, and action. You think, then you speak, then you act. But you can get the book by going to producejustice.com.
All righty, producejustice.com. All copies of the books are in, including the first edition, the one you're. Is that the one you're really speaking about?
The 1984, yes. That
1984.
was the first one. But there's an updated version, 2016, and an additional word guide came out before the updated version in 2010. And it talks about how to use words, how not to use words, and what questions to ask when other people use words. We've done some of that this morning. A person says black people should get together. Well, the question to ask, get together and do what? What do you mean by get together? See, it comes down to doing something. You're going to get together and do what? And not only that, not only do it, but how? How are you going to do it? This thing you're going to do, how are you going to go about doing it? How do you recommend everybody go about doing it in order to do what? Get the most constructive result. That's what.
Yes, sir. Okay. Let's go to the Gmails. This is from our friend Anthony McKinn. He's in England. And by the way, thank you for that brother that called from Sweden last week. This program goes international, and we want to thank that brother there. But this brother here, Anthony McKinn, always goes and greets us. Anyway, he's speaking about show-off-isms. He said this, Mr. Fuller. He said the great Bruce Lee is often attributed to the following quote: "Show-off is the fool's ideal of glory." End of quote. Well, there was a quote before, quotation before, and then the end. He says, the other day I was contemplating on the examples I have witnessed in my life where the results of showing off have been disastrous and tragic for some black people. I have witnessed how a black person showing off breeds jealousy and envy from the other black people. This then leads to hatred and quite often a black person harming the black person who is showing off, either directly or indirectly. On some occasions, the harm caused has even resulted in a black person being murdered. Mr. Fuller, could you please talk about why you considered it necessary for showing off to be one of the 10 stops in the code book? And do you also agree that showing off among black people is very dangerous behavior, bearing in mind our current state on this planet? Thank you, Anthony.
Well, that's not one of the 10 stops, but it is in the textbook. Don't do it. People's entire culture, if we tell the truth, is showing off. Showing off to whom? To each other. And it is the reason, the basic reason, other than the system of white supremacy itself, that black people are a total disaster in their interactions with themselves and each other, even the individual self. It's a self-destructive activity. Showing off. Showing off what? Showing off the things, first of all, that the white supremacists have allowed us to have. Showing them off to whom? We don't show them off to the white supremacists because they're the source of the things that we have. So we're showing off to other black people, okay, the things. The next thing, and this in the textbook, showing off what we know. Oh, man, you don't know nothing. Shut your mouth. You don't know nothing. I've been here. I've been there. I've seen this. I've seen that. Showing off the knowledge that you have been allowed to have under the system of white supremacy. Showing it off to whom? Not the white supremacists, because you got it from them. So you're showing it off to other black people. Then showing off what? Showing off the third thing. How making sexual impressions on each other. And a lot of us die because of that, whatnot. I mean, trying to impress someone sexually, getting involved in sexual matters and whatnot. And that also includes, going back to number one, the things, and also includes number two. And then the fourth one is showing off the ability to belittle each other. Hey, man, you ain't nobody. I mean, you know, you ain't nobody. Get out of here. I mean, you know, all right. That's belittling. You ain't nobody. You ain't this. You ain't that. I am everything. I'm the king of the world. Look at me. Everybody stop what you're doing. I'm going to get another tattoo and another hairdo, and you better pay me some attention. Showing off. When you get that hairdo or that tattoo, who are you showing off to? Who do you want to see it? Tell the truth. You want other black people to see it. That's who you're showing off to. Your whole existence is about just going around, walking up and down the street mostly, doing anything to get the attention of another black person. And then after you get that attention, don't know what to do with it. You got the attention now. Everybody's looking at you. Now what? That's act one. You got to act two. You should have a backup act. Most show-offs, most show business people, if you go to a play, they'll have act one, act two, act three. They call them, people that organize this type of thing, say you have a climax, and then you have an ending. What's supposed to be the ending of showing off? After you show off, what do you get? And the caller is absolutely correct. Many black people are out there right now as we speak, becoming what? Dead, D-E-A-D, because of a need to show off. And sometimes that need spills over to when you're being pulled over by someone with a badge and a gun who is not interested in none of your showing off. No interest at all. They don't know who you are and don't care, except they're pulling you over on account of your tags have expired. Now, many of us, with that need to show off, start telling that person with a badge and a gun what the gospel is. You come out of the car sometimes, many of us do that, tell the truth, with all this mouth about what you are not going to put up with and what you're stopping me for. And if you didn't have that badge and gun, in fact, I'm going to make you eat it. And then the record shows it's a formula It's a code of showing off that does not work.
Okay.
Now we've seen enough of that record to know that does not work at all. I've never seen anybody EMF their way out of a pair of handcuffs. Never seen it, never heard about it happening. You're going to give that person with a badge and a gun 15 or 20 EMFs and think that those cuffs are coming off because you are a champion at showing off, calling somebody names. We're great name callers now, and we do a lot of it among ourselves, and we pay a high price among ourselves. The murder rate among black people is an absolute monumental disgrace, and nobody should want any part of black culture just based on that alone, period, according to the code.
Right. There you have it. Okay, we have about 3.5 minutes before the conclusion of this show and the beginning of the next hour, but I will ask this question, and if we have to, we can continue over. Armand wrote this, Mr. Fuller. He says this: Good morning, Mr. Fuller. What are your conscious views on marijuana?
I don't know enough about it. I have heard people down through the years saying it is extremely harmful, that it's something you want to avoid. I know I have avoided it. I've never tried it. I tried smoking a cigarette once, just a lucky strike, I think it was, at age 13. I thought because I'd seen a person that I had great regard for, an elder person, smoking a pipe, and someone told me he was smoking a pipe that had, it was called rum and maple tobacco. It smelled sweet. And I love sweets. You know, I like candy and cookies and cakes and pies, age 13. And so I thought that maybe if I got me a cigarette, since it's all tobacco, it might be like rum and maple. So I got one lucky strike and lit it up. And after a few minutes, what I said to myself, this is nothing but smoke. And so I threw the cigarette away. And later on, I told somebody that I tried one. And they said, well, Fuller, you have to keep at it. You have to work at it. You don't get any feeling out of it the first time you try it. Now, every time I ate candy, it's the first time. I liked it. But that Lucky Strike cigarette, I didn't like. I started coughing. And I said, well, anything I got to work that hard at in order to enjoy it, I ain't going to do it. And I held to that. And then later on, when I saw people drinking alcohol, I saw how the result of it, people fighting, people falling down. I saw one person fall down into a sidewalk full of glass, face first, tore his face up, blood everywhere. I said, is that what alcohol makes you do? I don't want no part of that. I mean, that's not a constructive result at all. Even at age 13 and, 10 or whatever age I was when I first started seeing it, and I saw a lot of it, I said, oh, no, I'm not doing none of that. None. And so direct answer to the question, I always want to know, if someone gives me a marijuana cigarette, what's going to be the constructive result? That's the codified procedure. I want the constructive result now. Now, if someone says, well, it'll make you feel like you're a millionaire, I said, will it make me a millionaire? See, I'm a follow the logic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not talking about feeling like a millionaire. I mean, if that's the criteria, show me the million.
Okay. Good point. All righty. That is the conclusion of the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. After about a 5-second or 7-second break, we will enter into the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show. For those who have to go, thank you, and we hope to hear from you next week. But for those who are going to stay tuned for the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller in 7 seconds. All righty. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, if you would like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling this number, 453-9921. And when you do, you have this option. You can press the number 1 button, and you will go to the head of the line or be the next caller in line. Or you can just dial that number and just listen to the program, as many are doing right now. Though there are many people that are listening to Mr. Fuller and I. We thank you. You can also contribute by going into the chat room. We have Brightness in there, KJ, 3577 is there. Mata VGQ is in there. Pro Design 29 South is in the house. Did I get Brightness? Yeah, let me get Brightness. Brightness is in there. So we thank you for that. By the way, listen, when you do call in, make sure, sir, please, I'm asking, that you give the call screener your first name so that I can properly give you your dues, as D Money just did. Yeah, thank you so much, D Money. And let's see. Yeah, that'll be it. And then, of course, we will read your Gmails. All this and more coming up next. So let's go to the phone line. And we got D Money in the 609. You are there. Go ahead, D Money.
How you guys doing today, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller?
Good, sir.
Good. Please excuse my voice. I just had some dental work done. And I looked up and realized it was Tuesday, so I was like, I got a question I want to ask you guys. I wrote it down. Basically, I wrote down, I'm not sure how to phrase this question, and I know that you, Mr. Fuller, advised that we be precise in our words and questions, but I hope that you would help me through my question if you could. Fortunately, my question seems to be kind of like an age-old question as it pertains to the problems discussed on this program. Basically, it's like race or class. Like, which one is the main problem in the world today? Because sometimes I feel like it's class. Most people try to make it seem like it's class. You know, I'm really into like Marxism, socialism, all that type of stuff. But from listening to your program, Mr. Fuller, I've realized that it's probably white supremacy that's the main problem. So I was hoping that you could kind of help me understand that a little bit more. I know I didn't phrase the question right, but hopefully you may know what I'm trying to say.
Yes, sir. I understand. Because this was brought up earlier in this program this morning about a caste system. Race, caste, class. Well, racism is a class system, in my opinion. And it's also a caste system. If you just go by the definitions, look in a dictionary, in an ordinary dictionary in the English language, and I concluded that you can use those words. Words are nothing but tools to get a job done anyway. And so you can say class, in my opinion, this is strictly my opinion, or you can say caste, or you can say race, which is the same thing. I mean, somebody says race. Are you talking about automobile race? Are you talking about a race? Some people even use the space race. I never understood that type of terminology, because how can you race against space? You use space. See, if you really think about words, you can't race against space. You use space. Space is space. That's the way I see it. Maybe I'm not looking at it correctly. But words are just tools. So if you choose the words caste or class, you can explain what you mean when you say it. That's the compensatory way. That's the thing that the textbook for victims of racism say that we must do. Use words in such a manner that they work for you and not against you. Any word. Doesn't make any difference what the word is. You get a constructive result. So racism, in my opinion, is the dominant class or caste, or you might even say royalism, communism. The white supremacists are the most powerful communists on the planet. They are also the most powerful capitalists on the planet. They are also the most powerful royalists and socialists on the planet. If you want to look at it that way, and I choose to look at it just that way. Name any ism. Name any religion. The white supremacist religion, called the religion of white supremacy, is the most powerful religion on planet Earth in 2020 in recorded history. There's no religion that has more influence than the system of white supremacy among the people of planet Earth in 2020. The religion of white supremacy is the dominant religion. Should be called that, in my opinion. And based on what? Fuller's opinion? No. What is Fuller's opinion based on? Logic and evidence. Check around. Check all the religions of planet Earth, of all of the people on it, and if you're a person of color, just ask yourself, is the religion of white supremacy dominant over people of color more than any other religion that people of color say is their religion? Black, brown, red, yellow people. Is the system of white supremacy dominant? Do they obey the white supremacists more than they obey any person who is supposed to be or said to be the leader or the originator or the person that facilitates their religion?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question all people can ask. And that's just one example, but just go through any of the other areas of activity. Economics. The people of this planet. Who do they depend on when it comes to the use of time and energy and the use of money, which is just a tool of economics? We usually think of economics as just pertaining to money. No, economics is basically how you use your time and how you use your energy. And if you're a person with color in your skin, you use your time and your energy to support the system of white supremacy, according to all the evidence.
All right, D-Money. Thank you so much, sir, for your call.
Thank you, guys.
And don't be a stranger. Thank you so much. Okay. Let's see here. Oregon McNellen, and I messed that up. Let me see if I get it correctly. Oregon Nick Melanon has joined joined the chat room. Wow, that's a interesting name. But thank you for joining the chat room. And again, I acknowledge that by saying good morning. Mr. Fuller, question coming from Ms. Anonymous. Says this: the topic is public schools. She says, Mr. Fuller, why, I'm going to read it the way she wrote it. maybe there should be another word, but I'm going to read it the way she wrote it. Why most schools have corporal punishment, and how come this is legal for teachers / staff members to do this on a student?
By corporal punishment, you mean physical brutality?
I just read it. I don't know what you meant.
Yeah, well, yes, I must understand that.
Okay.
Now, those are her words. So,
yes.
I experienced that back in the 1930s, briefly, in, I think, just for a short period in the elementary school. The teacher would, you make a mistake in what you were saying, and the teacher would bend back your hand. Not all teachers, just one or two who would do that, and hit your hand with a ruler and say, "Don't make that mistake again in your recitation or in what you just said. That'll teach you." And I came to the conclusion at a very early age, nobody should brutalize anybody. That's not the way to teach anybody anything. Dictatorship. That's not teaching. You explain to people what should be done and what should not be done, and you always, in your explanation, otherwise you're not explaining, always say why. Now, a lot of people take the position of not even explaining why, except to say, "'Cause I said so." And that should never be an answer to a question anywhere on the planet to anybody. When a person asks a question, there's a reason for the question. All progress, all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So in direct answer to that question, no, you don't brutalize anybody of any age, because that's what that is. You don't strike a person in the process of trying to teach a person. You might strike a person in the process of trying to keep that person from killing somebody unjustly. But if you're teaching the person and you want the person to learn, now I had another teacher, I will say this, who had a code. He would let all the students know from the very first day they came into his class. Now, if you don't want to be here, if you don't want to be in this class, don't come in here, because you don't want to be here. If you don't want to learn what I have to teach you, then don't come into the class. I don't want anybody to be in this class who does not want to be here to learn. You go and let the administrators know that you do not want to be here. And I'll try to do everything I can to see to it that you are not here if you don't want to learn. Now, that's the major rule before, as we start out this first day of your schooling in this class of mine. And I observed everybody was always present in that person's class. They did not cut that person's class. It was like magic. Because it was an understanding. He wasn't going to force you to sit down and be quiet and all that. He said, "I'm not doing that. That's not my job. My job is to teach." And this is what I suggest be done all over everywhere today. If a person doesn't want to learn, okay, you go somewhere where you think that you're going to learn what you need to know, how to read and write and all like that. And if you think that you can learn that out there at the liquor store or wherever, welcome to it. That'll be your school. Well, a lot of people know enough about that school to know just about where that's going, too. And you should learn that real early.
Okay. Miss Anonymous continues this, changing the topic to fashion and clothing. Mr. Fuller, she asked, did sagging pants really started from slavery? And also, when did you start seeing black males start to do that?
Okay, I don't know when it actually started, but I do know when I started seeing it. I think it was in the early 70s, right after the so-called civil rights movement began to kind of die out. Then I started seeing sagging pants. And then I asked somebody, what was that all about? And they said, well, it came out of the penitentiaries because they didn't allow the people to have belts because people might be suicidal with belts or they might use it to choke another prisoner, cut off his breathing. I can't breathe. So I said, oh.
Yeah.
And that's what I heard. And then I started seeing it, and people making sure that their pants were sagging. So I never asked anybody, now, what is the purpose of the sagging pants? Because I understood that probably to ask a black person who has sagging pants what the sagging pants message was, I imagine that's a message of some type. And I've never asked, so I never got an answer. So somebody can probably tell me, what is the ultimate goal of a black person walking down the street with their pants down around their ankles or down their knees or just below the buttocks, which is usually where it is? What is the purpose? Is there a message being sent here? Because just like hair, among most people, headdresses, you're sending a message. So the code requires that if I really want to know, I ask somebody who does know. So I've never heard anybody out of all the dozens, I guess, and hundreds and thousands of people who wore sagging pants, and some of them still do. What is the message? I've never heard anybody say what the message was. I've just seen it. But maybe somebody can call in right now and say, what is the message? Is there a message? Other than just look at me, my pants are sagging. And I want you to see my brand new shorts or whatever is there. But maybe these are message pants. I don't know. What is the message? Usually when people do something deliberately to attract attention, they have a message to send. That's in the hairdo or the nails or eyeshadow. You're sending a message. Paint on the lips, you're sending a message. An Indian tribe, you put some paint on your face. Somebody told me that some of it might be war paint. That's a message. And I guess sagging pants is in that same category. What is the message? Is the message come and get it or what?
Okay. All righty. Let's go to the phone lines, and in the 716AX, you are now live. Go ahead, AX.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I had a question about white supremacy. I'm wondering, is white supremacy like a bully that needs to be faced head on? For example, when there's a bully and the bully has been bullying everybody for days, months, and years, it seems like the only way to get rid of the bully is to confront the bully head on. So I've been seeing different things where black people are buying arms and forming militias, but I do understand that the guns and the ammo that we buy actually comes from the white supremacists. So that's not good. But the question is have you ever thought or felt like a solution to solving white supremacy is to confront them head on?
No. That's why I wrote the textbook for Victims of White Supremacy. All so-called interactions between white people and non-white people, in my opinion, should be based on logic that produces constructive results. And these are all outlined in the 9 areas of activity that the book that I have written is segmented in. In economics, you do and not do certain things in economics. In education, right on up to and including the 9th area of activity, war, counter-war, which all of it is war because we are prisoners of war. We have already been taken prisoner. We were born in prison. If you're a person of color, you were born in the system of white supremacy. And the system of white supremacy has a prison name, is a prison, first of all, and has a prison name, and the name of that prison is the system of white supremacy. So you're confronting the system of white supremacy all the time because you're in their prison system. So it's just a matter of how you go about doing it in a counter-racist fashion that always does what? Produces a constructive result for the prisoner and, by extension, for the world at large and for the future of all humanity as it is evolving into production. Because right now we don't have human beings on the planet. You can't have human beings in a system of white supremacy. Nobody is a human being. Nobody is humane in the system of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
We're all messed up people, according to the compensatory logic.
All righty. AX, thank you for your call, and please do not be a stranger. Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Fuller, I'm going to bring this up. This is one of our more hot-button subjects, but it comes across that it probably needs more explanation, and I've gotten a lot of emails about this worldwide. Anyway, this is Dee Dee called last week on the show regarding the white male, or statement, the white male's anus as a new replacement for the black female vagina. And she said, as a female, I think Mr. Fuller is suggesting that as a female, I would not necessarily see the evidence, but that males might be more exposed to this. I definitely see male on male and female on female coupling that the racist white supremacists are planning for non-white people. But can you, Mr. Fuller, help me out to understand what signs are supporting your statement?
The signs that you see people parading in the street, and you look at television, and you look at all of the talk and talk shows, and in universities, everywhere. The signs are everywhere because people are saying that we have something called LGBTQ. I think I get the alphabet straight. And I think there'll be added alphabets, and that this is something that black people should really look into and embrace as a great form of progress, that this is what Marcus Garvey had in mind. I think that's the implication. What Sojourner Truth had in mind. what getting out of slavery is really all about. That, well, we need, along with our so-called advancement, progress, problem solving, we need more recognition of varieties of sexuality than the primitive, it's implied, initial, it's called straight category when it comes to sexuality. What you black people need is more categories of sexuality. You're shortchanging yourself. You should branch out. You should have more of a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a whole lot of the other. And then they go through a catalog of things that you should be. A whole alphabet, it seems like, a new alphabet. Right now it's just about 4 or 5 letters, and in the English alphabet, I think it's 22 letters?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They might run through the whole 22 and have a description for each category and say that this is a great improvement over black people's destiny. That they should concentrate on that and forget about all this other stuff, put that on the back burner. That's how it seems to me. If you start talking about Black Lives Matter, we got to get some decent housing. We need some, school lunch programs or something. We need to have more black people in the schools, learning how to do things, how to invent things, and how to take care of themselves without being beggars and not being homeless and whatnot. And no, put all that on. It seems like there's a cadre of people, mostly white, who are, and that's what I'm seeing, who are saying, no, put all that on the back burner. Get to that later. Get to that maybe 50, 100 years later. You want a decent house, don't talk to me about that. I ain't got no money for you. I ain't got no advice for you, nothing. But now if you want to lead the cripple sex parade, the scatter sex parade, the whatever that has to do with a different type of sexuality, if you got any ideas, bring them on, and I'll finance it. I'll parade you and have you lead the parade, and I'll push you along with it. And you draw in as many other black people as you can in support of it. And we'll all have a fine time with that. But right now, I don't want you to mention anything about, improving your education or the street that you're on or going into business or anything like that. We'll get to that sometime 200 years later. But right now, you need, what you black people need with your ignorant selves is newer and more invigorating forms of sexuality. That's what you need.
But wouldn't
that's
that lead
what they seem to be saying.
Okay, but wouldn't
that's the message that I'm receiving.
Mm-hmm.
In all that I'm saying, they're willing to support that all the way.
But
and finance it, but they're not willing to finance you in anything else. You want to go into business, start opening a fruit stand or something like that. Oh, well, now that's going to get too complicated. But if you want to lead the so-called gay parade and you're black, hey, if you're a male, put on that dress and some lipstick and some high heels. I'll put you in the movies right now. Put you right in the head of the line. You don't have to go to the casting office.
But wouldn't that lead to sexual confusion?
That's exactly what is happening. And I'm saying that's exactly what the white supremacists are banking on, to put black people for the next few generations and probably into infinity into total confusion, because when you can confuse people sexually, you can confuse them in everything else easily and dominate them forever. That's the theory. And I believe that theory is correct.
Okay. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. as we enter into the last half hour of the program. To get in contact with the show, 516-453-9921. Make sure that you hit the number 1 button, as Dwayne from Mississippi has done. Somebody in the 716, we're going to get to them. And identify yourself, ma'am, sir, please. Or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. You can do that. Okay, you have your numbers. Chat room is available, and all my people are hanging in there. Very good. Pro Design 29 South, Brightness, KJ, JJ's in the house, Mata VGQ, and that last one, Organic Melanin, is in there. Hopefully I got that right. Anyway, thank you for all your listenership. Okay, let's go to Dwayne in the 601. That would be Mississippi. Dwayne, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Dr. Fuller.
Greetings, sir.
Greetings.
I'd like to make a statement, and I want to follow with a question, not to take up too much of your time. Dr. Fuller, I appreciate everything you've done, because your book has changed my life in regards to dealing with white supremacy in the country. I went to school in Meridian, Mississippi, where the principal suspended me or attempted to suspend me just for reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I didn't understand it, but now that I'm in my 40s, I finally understand it with your help. Now, my question deals with victims and victimizers. Being that people that are victimized, especially under the system of white supremacy, then become victimizers themselves. So can non-white people, even though not qualified to be white supremacists, can they be classified as white supremacists? And can truth in the areas of religion and politics be a start to reform them?
Well, if I understand the question, non-white people cannot be white supremacists simply because they are non-white. You have to be classified as white in order to be a white supremacist. That's basic. The white supremacists will confuse themselves if they don't get that straight. And they make it very clear that there's a distinction between being classified, and they do the classifying, as white and non-white. You have to get that straight. There can't be any confusion about that. None. Zero. Except in the minds of the victims of white supremacy. But the white supremacists are never supposed to be confused about what color somebody is. If they get confused about that, they're out of business. So they make sure that white people understand the difference between white and non-white. And black people may be confused, but the white supremacists are never confused because they make the decision about who is going to be white and who is not going to be white. Nobody else makes that decision. That's the power of white supremacy.
Yes,
okay.
And,
Dwayne?
the second part of the question, I thank you for that answer, Dr. Phillip. And the second part, can educating the truth, which is what the white supremacist does not want, and we take an individual stance to tell the truth in the areas of religion and politics and all 9 areas of human activity. Can that be the start to conquering white supremacy?
Yes, truth is absolutely necessary in anything. You can't solve a problem without the truth, because you won't recognize even what constitutes the problem. And you can't solve a problem that you don't understand. You have to understand what the problem is. That's why you have to understand white supremacy in order to solve the problem of white supremacy. And understand what? Understand what it is and how it works in all of the 9 areas of activity. If you don't understand that, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Of course, you're going to make them anyway in the process. But as long as you understand that it should be replaced with a system of justice, you stick with that. And you have a procedure for doing it. And that procedure would be a codified procedure, meaning every time you do it, it works. Every time you say it, it works. That's what you call code. That's when you know something is codified, because it works every time you do it. Electrical code, plumbing code, whatever type of code it is, it works every time you do it. And that is what is needed. We don't have one. That's why I'm trying to present at least the foundation of one, where people can understand that that's what is needed, and then some ingredients that go into it to make it work, some suggestions. And I'm doing it in the form of a code book. That's what we need. Code books. Everybody should be writing code books. Now, don't write exactly what Neely Fuller wrote, because you want different perspectives. I mean, if the field is big enough, there are enough problems that need solving. That's how you write code books. You run into a problem, and you figure out how to solve that problem, and you run tests on it if you can. And if it works, that should become a part of the code. If it works and produces a constructive result, that's when you have a code. Everybody should be thinking that way. What can I do to solve this problem? It's all about problem solving, because the system of white supremacy is the most powerful problem on the planet. So everybody that wants to have what we call a world like it should be trying to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice, and do it in a codified manner. Because a codified manner is the only way to go to be successful.
All righty. Dwayne, thank you. And do not be a stranger to the program. Thank you. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We got Swa. Then we're going to do Gregory. And then Monica, you're last, I think. Thank you to the Swa that just joined the chat room. And Vorp is in the house, in the chat room. Thank you very, very much. Okay, let me go down here. And let's see. Let's see, Swa. Wait a minute. If I can get him up here. Okay, there we go. In the 213, Central LA. My man is in the house. Okay, wait a minute. There we go. Can't get you in here. I'm trying.
I can hear you.
Oh, got it. Okay. It didn't pop up. Okay, go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Neely Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Neely Fuller, my question for you is, in your 91 years of being on this planet, have you ever met a white person who was serious about replacing white supremacy with justice?
No.
No? Okay.
And the evidence is we still have white supremacy, because the criteria of the code is very strict, and the requirements are huge, which is what is needed, because it's a big job. So a white person who says they are trying to end racism gets no credit at all. None. Zero. If they're white, you only can show that you're sincere about ending racism when what? According to the code. When racism is ended. So in answer to your question, again, no. I've never met a white person or any person who has ended white supremacy. So you get no credit for just announcing you're working on it. That's what that black sergeant taught me when I was in Japan in the 1950s. He said, Fuller, don't you ever tell me how hard you've been working. Hard work is not unique. people work hard all the time, everywhere. That ain't nothing new. He said, show me the result.
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment as well. When I was about 13, much before I knew about racial and white supremacy, I met two white men. One was like probably in his 20s, and one was probably in his 50s or 40s. And the younger white man taught me how to pick lock, and the older white man introduced me and my twin brother to bestiality porn. So when you have a clip talking about white people will eventually start pushing bestiality on people, and I genuinely believe that to be 100% accurate because I've seen it. I've seen their nature ever since I was a child. This is just in their nature, I believe. But thank you. That's it.
Okay. Thank you for your call, Swat, and do not be a stranger. Okay, let me get you out of there. Okay, Gregory from West Palm Beach in the 201. Let me see. Gotcha, bruh. Go ahead with your question.
Good morning, brothers. Hey,
good morning.
I have a question, but I have something I wanted to comment on that you were talking about earlier about the sagging word with the pants. I spotted a few years ago on Mr. Fuller's show to spell the word sagging backwards is A-G-G-I-N. Spell that backwards. What does that spell?
Yeah, we know that one. Everybody knows that one.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point that out. But my question is for Mr. Fuller is that with everything going on with the politics right now and politically and everything, say the white supremacists are going to confront us as they say they will during this time for the transition of everything with, the president and everything. What do you recommend that we do as a co-wise to deal with this situation?
I want to make clear what I'm being asked now to answer.
Yeah.
The question is what?
My question, to be more concise, what should we, as what should we do in the very near future regarding everything?
You were cut off.
Right, repeat the question there. Yeah, great.
What should we do if we're confronted by white supremacists during the political race?
Being confronted how? We have an election.
Confronted, like physical confrontation with the militias and just all the everything with white supremacy, all just put out there to confront us at one time.
Oh, you asked for protection from the people who are supposed to be protecting you. You're allowed to come into the street, and if you're a demonstrator, you get permission, directly, indirectly, from somebody white to demonstrate. So the somebody white should protect you, and if they don't, you leave the scene, don't hang around and get hurt, and then you go to the people who allowed you to demonstrate and ask, because as a prisoner of war, that's all you can do, why it is that you were told that it was okay to demonstrate, and then you were told that you were not going to demonstrate by people who had guns and who confronted you with the intention of doing you harm for demonstrating. That's it. You always remember, you're a prisoner of war. So you do the same things that prisoners of war would do in a prison. That will have the most constructive effect on what it is you're trying to do while you're in prison. That's the main thing for black people to remember. We're not, we don't have anything except our prison uniform, really. And we don't even have that. And that's the color that's in our skin. It all comes under the jurisdiction of the white supremacists. So all we can really do is ask and or beg. B-E-G. When you're a prisoner of war for the things that you need. Until when? Until you're no longer a prisoner of war.
Could I ask you another question, Mr.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to know how you feel like that. I just want to ask you, how do you think that COVID-19 has affected or as revealed, rather, the, racism, white supremacy, and how we are victims of it more.
Well, from what I read, the black people are getting the worst of it worldwide. So to the white supremacists, they're satisfied with that. That's the white supremacist strategy. That's, as long as black people are worse off than white people in the system of white supremacy, that fulfills the white requirement, the white supremacist requirement. That's their code. All they want to know is, are black people suffering more than I am, collectively? And if the answer is yes, they have fulfilled their mission. That's all. It's real simple. They have a real simple formula for everything, and that's it. Are the black people of this planet worse off behind this COVID-19 than the white people? And if they are, high five it, rubber stamp it. Everything is just fine. We're in heaven.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gregory, in the 2.
Thank you. I want to compliment Mr.
area.
I know he'll like compliments, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, and don't be a stranger. Okay. Let me go up in here. We're going to go to the great state of New York. I believe we're going to go there. We sure are. And in the 716, we have Monica. Monica, let me see here. Evidently, yeah, there we go. Wait a minute, let me see. It's still buffering. Okay, Monica, you're on. Good morning, and what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby, did you guys have a chance yesterday to listen to the Carl Nelson show?
I'm not in that
I
locale.
didn't.
Oh, you did not? Okay, and I was just wondering, will you be on there anytime soon, Mr. Fuller?
I was on the Carl Nelson show about 2 weeks ago. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, maybe less.
Oh, I heard you. Yes, I did catch you. I was just wondering, are you coming back on anytime soon?
I'm usually on about once a month, and they let me know usually about 2 days in advance, and I put the notice on producejustice.com.
Okay.
Okay.
I always announce it in front, but usually I don't know. I don't know before about 2 or 3 days. I mean, sometimes it's a day, but usually it's about 3 days. I get about a 3-day advance notice, and I put it up immediately when I get it on the website, producejustice.com, announcing when it will be.
Okay. Excuse me, Mr. Fuller. Monica, do you know if from this locale, is that show on the internet that I could also get that here?
The Carl Nelson show, or?
Yes, the Carl Nelson show. Because I would
you know what I do? I just every day at 4 o'clock, I just type in, I Google the Carl Nelson show, and it pops right up, and then it'll say listen live.
Okay, I'll do that. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to ask Mr. Fuller. I don't remember the gentleman, but there was a great show yesterday. It was just I can't remember the guy that was on there, but the show was just talking about blacks empowering themselves and trying to buy black and just giving you tips on how to do that, to like have a company and everything strictly be black. That's something that piqued my interest. And Mr. Nelson, he was telling an example of just situations that happen with blacks. There was a black gentleman, I think it was in Pittsburgh. The gentleman, he was doing very well, and he had a black barber shop. And then an Asian gentleman moved in, and he lowered his prices a little bit. And then the black gentleman, the barber, he lost all his business. And just because he lowered his price, all his customers started going with the Asian guy. And so, the callers called in, and it was just kind of disturbing to me. A black gentleman, from what I could make, he called in, and he was on the Asian guy's side, and he was going, Asian people cut hair better, and, blacks, they just don't know how to cut. And I know this was a black gentleman, so just the remarks, they were very negative. Instead of him thinking on the lines of, maybe he just had a bad black barber, he based that on all black barbers. And the guest and Mr. Nelson kept trying to, point that out to him. So my question is, do you think that mindset can be changed, Mr. Fuller, when you have blacks and there's so much self-hate for other blacks? Is there a way to change that, or should you just try to not even be around people like that? Because, it kind of made me get angry, and I'm sure other people that was listening felt the same way. I mean, the gentleman called in just to make such a point of putting other black people down.
Well, black people are going to be in conflict with each other as long as the system of white supremacy exists. That's a given, because the white supremacists set that up. If you're talking about, quote, unquote, an Asian barbershop, it would not be an Asian barbershop there unless the white supremacists decided there was going to be a, quote, unquote, Asian barbershop there. That's the way everything works. And the white supremacists sit back and watch the fireworks because they know that's coming. See, the white supremacists make these plans. Non-white people don't make any plans about what they're going to do in the system of white supremacy, except what the white supremacists allow them to plan and actually do. Because the black people may make plans, but the white supremacists will decide what's going to happen to those plans. That is what understanding white supremacy is all about. There's going to be conflict. Like in a prison system, you put a prisoner in a cell with another prisoner, and there's not enough room in the cell, and they keep bumping into each other, keep stepping on each other's toes. Next thing you know, there's another fight in that particular cell. Now, the person who set that cell system up is the person who is the master of that cell and who set it up so that he or she, the master of that cell, knew what was going to happen when they put two people in there in a cell that was made not even decent for one person, and put two people in there who are naturally going to be in conflict with one another. So what's the remedy? You have to get rid of the prison system. There's no way around it. It's going to continue. Black people having disputes with each other about business. Black people having disputes with each other about everything in every area of activity. Male with female. They say the murder rate among black people between males and females. Black males are now killing black females at an alarming rate. I saw in the African American newspaper, black newspaper out of Baltimore, Maryland. I saw that recently. That there's a high murder rate. Black males shooting black females. Okay? Black males, a lot of them walking around with guns. Now they're shooting black females. They're just, they have an argument, and you're going to have them. The white supremacists know that. One way or another, we're always in conflict. Black males and black females, they are put in a situation where they are going to have conflict. Now the conflict escalates into bloodshed and death. That might escalate and keep escalating as long as you have the system of white supremacy. Otherwise, if everything is just going to be fine under the system of white supremacy, having a black barber shop and having black this and black that, it wouldn't be any point in getting rid of it. But the white supremacists do not set anything up for black people that's not going to breed conflict. You got to get rid of the system, and that's what this program is all about, and replace it with a whole new system called justice.
Okay. Monica from New York, thank you for your call, and don't be a stranger, and thank you for that information. I'll try to get the Carl Nelson show here myself. Okay, thank you very much, Monica, and don't be a stranger. Okay, Mr. Fuller, before I have you speak about your book for the last few moments, on that Carl Nelson show, you say you're on every at least once a month, and it comes on at 4 p.m.?
On average, it is once a month, and it comes on from 5 until 7 at different times, different days. We don't have a set date. See, they usually call me about 2 or 3 days before I go on.
Oh, okay. So it's not necessarily on a Tuesday then? No.
Okay. And I will advertise it on ProduceJustice.com, which for people who are listening, that's where you can get the textbook too, because a lot of the things that I'm saying on the air, most of the things that I say on the air, come out of the textbook for victims of white supremacy. Go to ProduceJustice.com.
And we can, as far as you know, the books are just, you can get that first publication, the 1984 edition.
You can, yes.
Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm. Did you ever
you should be able to get all 3 books right now.
Mm-hmm. Is there a specific reason why people like that edition? I like the 2016, the revised version myself.
Some people say they like both. They like having both. Some people say, well, the 2016 edition is adequate for them, which is how I intended it for it to be, rather than buy 2 books. The 1984 edition is an edition from that time, it's duplicated in the revised expanded edition, which is 2016. 2016 edition is what I recommended, what I had on the website in the beginning. But some people say, for some strange reason, they want both of them. And some people have said the reason why is because, and I don't understand it, they understand or they like the format of the 1984 edition. They like that typewriter type presentation. They say, it's easier for them to read and understand. I don't see why that would be, but some people see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I was a better writer then. Sometimes I see some passages that I wrote better than I wrote in the updated version.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm beginning to wear out. That goes with the territory.
Mm-hmm.
Neely Fuller is wearing out. His mind is beginning to deteriorate. I guess a lot of people are saying that your mind was deteriorated when you first read that, produced that first book.
Man, I don't know, because of the Gmails and calls that I get worldwide. I don't think that that's the truth. If anything, I think people criticize you for getting on yourself because you say something to the effect that, well, you always say you're still learning, but you could do better, or give yourself a C- or whatever. They don't.
Oh yes, I'm going to continue to do that. Why? Because I should. That's how you improve.
Yes, sir.
I mean, every person going out for football or basketball understands that.
Okay.
I mean, you're never at your best. You never reach your best. You just keep going, trying to get better. Got to get better.
I tell you what we've done. We have reached the conclusion of these 2 hours that went by fast. So thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Thank you, Gmailers. Thank all of you for listening. Thank you, producers. It's been a wonderful show. We'll try to do better next week. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
ProduceJustice.com. Thank you.
Yes, sir.